Hello there, yes, as promised this morning, follow up, New Culture Forum, Rafe on mass migration. It's actually a filmed version of the speech he gave to the New Culture Forum's national conference. Before we begin, I need to make an apology. This morning I said that DNA test that I had done, it's 23andMe thing, said I was 100% British and Irish. That's been updated. I'm actually 1.5% French and German now, which means obviously I feel incredibly bad about myself. Suddenly I'm devalued somehow. Yes, I was thinking to myself, does that partially explain Rafe with his various hang-ups? I mean, the fact that he's spent his life, sort of making a name for himself in genealogy, looks just slightly obsessive. Anyway, he starts off with this by quoting, "Oh, you're my favourite and the last shell hole available to any petty-minded racist," which of course is Rivers of Blood and Enoch Powell. It didn't happen. The Rivers of Blood didn't happen, and you can quote him as much as you like. It didn't happen. And again, it shows in part, I think, at least the sort of paucity of thought, because you might argue that, for example, the 1981 riots were race riots, except of course then you're completely ignoring politics and policing and economics, which Rafe, I think, does quite a bit in this, but let's move on. Anyway, he doesn't quote Rivers of Blood speech, he quotes another thing about how nice the British are. Here it is. Yes, and then he moves on to complain bitterly about New Labour, who apparently invited loads of brown people in to make sure they win elections. Yeah, that worked, didn't it? He neatly brushes over the Conservative Party in the last 13 years. It's something he can't quite explain as to what exactly is going on with that. Anyway, obviously, let's have a look at his audience, because they definitely lap it up. I actually spotted an Asian woman there. I was quite surprised. Yes, and then he spends some time playing with numbers, as I pointed out this morning. If you look at these figures, it suggests that there's been a 20% decrease in the percentage of white British people in the country. And he pretends, presumably, or maybe he just can't read numbers, that this isn't to do with the sample question, but in fact is to do with demographic fall. I don't know. I think he's being deliberately, obtuse with that, one might say. He then comes on to that classic, the Norman Tebbit, what we used to call the cricket test, yes, and complains bitterly about foreigners bringing their battles to the streets of London, which again is completely historically blind. And I love the photo he uses, because if you notice, the youths in the photo are actually wearing Union Jack masks, which kind of goes against what he's saying somewhat. And it's almost like he's never heard of Scottish football fans as well. Yes, and then he comes on and makes some absolutely jaw-dropping claims, like this one about the USA.
America in the early 20th century was riven with social tension and unrest following decades of mass migration from around the world in the late 19th century and early 20th centuries. Many of the fears that were expressed then are similar to those that one hears now. America's response was to dramatically restrict immigration to the country, starting in the 1920s, right through to the 1960s. The motivation was, quote, to preserve the ideal of US homogeneity. Now, it's no coincidence that those 4 decades, 1920 to 1960, were America's golden age, the era of unprecedented stability, social cohesion, and self-confidence.
Yes, indeed. I mean, forget depression, forget the Second World War. Yes, the fact that the USA in the 1960s was a world superpower is because they restricted immigration. There. How right is that, history fans? And then, then he comes on to his solutions. And at this point, I am going to use the word fascist, because he suggests that the youth have been captured by nefarious left-wing teachers. He obviously doesn't know what goes on in schools and hasn't bothered to find out. He has no concept of the Prevent programme, he has no concept realistically about what the national curriculum it teaches, and he certainly doesn't know that British values are a core requirement of schools. His solution to this is quite an astounding one if you think about it. Let's just listen to what he's got to say about that.
All of this has to form part of our core education system. But of course, that's not enough, because to hope to get any of that history taught to students means going to war with teachers and the teacher training colleges, the madrasas of the woke religion. Teachers are more left-wing now than at any point in history, with fewer than 10% voting Conservative. They are beholden to progressive ideologies. Consequently, the degree to which the young children and students of today hold views that differ from those who are just 10 or 15 years older is truly shocking. We have to bring an end to the radical ideologies that prevail in our schools and which seek to undermine Britain and the West. And that means a complete overhaul of our teacher training system and an abolition of teacher training colleges and a swooping out of the old and bringing in something that actually works effectively for the best interest of the child and the nation.
Yes, indeed. Don't like the teachers? Just get rid of them. After all, they vote the wrong way, because we want to live in a free society where we appreciate people's views, but not teachers. I wonder why teachers don't vote Conservative. Answers on a postcard, kids. Yeah, indeed. Yes, so what? We'll just have teachers that are party members, shall we? That'll be a good idea. I wonder what part of history that reminds me of. It's quite hard to think of. Anyway, let's listen to his closing remarks, which don't sound in any way, shape or form the F word.
We are in a battle of culture and of civilizations, make no mistake about that. And in these battles, only the strong win. I've said many times in the past that a civilization that won't defend its culture doesn't deserve to exist. God willing, Britain can still summon up the strength, the fortitude and the resolution to be victorious once more.
Yes, indeed. It's a cultural, civilizational battle where only the strong will survive, and we mustn't give in to the Bolshevik hordes. Oh, what a giveaway that one is, eh? Yes, I can actually mentally put Rafe into the film Downfall as one of the guys off to one side, wondering where it all went wrong in 1945. And the answer to that particular question in 1945 was that they just had the wrong ideas and were basically, full stop, wrong. And this is Rafe's problem. He sees history through a very, very particular lens. And, speaking as somebody with very good genes, I don't really want to be lectured by an immigrant about these things. I like it is here, if you don't mind. I'd prefer it to be better. But it isn't going to be made better by these kind of ideas. Anyway, have a lovely rest of the day.